Hey y'all, hey, happy marvelous Monday. I hope that you are well. I'm super excited that you are joining me today. I'm Karissa Spann, the abundantly blessed landlord and tenant expert. And today I'm super excited to share um, an intriguing story. So a landlord was fined in the range of $50,000 for failing to repair or to replace a tenant's toilet. The fine was, like I said, somewhere around $50,000. And so I'm going to get into that today. I'm going to give the backdrop of what happened. I'm going to give some tips for landlords so that many others will avoid making this costly mistake. Before I get into it, I just want to say that this is what I do each and every Monday. I'm live on Facebook, I'm live on LinkedIn, and I'm live on YouTube, sharing information for landlords as well as tenants to hopefully positively impact the rental community. However, I do also want to put this disclaimer out there that information that I share is not legal advice. I am not a landlord and tenant attorney. I just want to make sure that that's clear. So let me pull up my disclaimer here. But again, this is what I do each and every Monday. I'm live at 7:30 p.m. for these conversations and discussions. And so today, if you have questions, if you have comments, remarks, or observations, please throw it in the comment section. For those of you who are watching a replay, thank you so much. I'm a little later than I anticipated on today, but I wanted to make sure that I came to you live with this information. So this is hot off the press. This is a live story. This is an active matter that is currently going on as we speak at this point of time. All right. And so, again, I want to just encourage you to any questions that you have, whether you're tuned in from that Facebook channel, the LinkedIn page, or the YouTube page, drop your question or your comment in the chat box and I will respond to them accordingly. All right. And if you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go to YouTube, find me there, Landlord Life with Karissa Spann. There you can find all of the videos, all the lives that I've done, watch some of the replays. And then obviously, if you have questions or concerns when I'm not on the air, feel free to email me and I will respond to you. All right. So today is all about discussing the matter of a landlord who refused to fix a tenant's toilet and was fined up to almost $50,000. True story. And so I want to bring awareness to the rental community of things that happens when landlords don't make repairs. And I know that sometimes for those landlords who have never tuned in, those landlords who self-manage their property, or maybe new property managers who are not as knowledgeable about the industry. Those are the people that I'm hoping to reach with this segment today. And I want you to take notes. If you are a landlord, if you're tuned in and you know someone who else is a landlord, please share this, like, tag, and share it with somebody on today, because I promise this is going to help somebody. All right. So I do want to make sure that I don't monopolize your time. I want to get straight into this story today because it's heartbreaking. But here's why I'm excited to share. Many of you know that I am a property management educator. This is what I do. In addition to teaching, I bring this information live. In addition to managing property, I've been in this space for almost 30 years, and I know that a lot of landlords are not as knowledgeable about things that they should and should not do. I know that a lot of tenants are not aware of their tenant rights as well as their responsibilities. And so I like to give the ugly truth, but I also like to give truth, because if we share the truth, then truth should make you free, right? But unfortunately, that does not always happen for everybody. And in this situation, the story that I'm sharing today, a landlord learned the hard way of what not to do in the future with their rental property. And it also sends a clear message to tenants when repairs are not being made, when they're not, when those repairs are not conducted timely. Whether landlords and owners, property managers, or whoever, whether they realize it or not, it still sends a clear message to tenants, because at the end of the day, it is a business. Many of you know that one of my philosophies is this: if you treat your business like a business, it's going to pay you like a business. If you treat it, however, like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby. And so sharing this information, it should be an eye opener of what not to do. Now, I know in 2023, I said quite a few times during my lives that we were going to start to see more lawsuits filed against landlords by tenants, and it is happening. Now, my goal, I'm hoping to help many of you avoid, as a landlord, avoid going down that road, right? Because it's a business. And I'm sure that nobody starts out with the mindset of being a shiesty landlord. But sometimes things happen. And here's the thing, bad things happens to good people. And it doesn't really matter how you start a thing. What matters most is how you finish. And so my encouragement to you, even before I get into the story, is to always finish strong. I've spoken to quite a few of you who are landlords, and there are some things that you don't have in place, right? Maybe you don't have a business license. Maybe you don't have the knowledge. Maybe you don't have the education or the skill set to successfully manage or run your rental property business. That is no excuse. Now is the time to not just tune in, but to also take notes when I'm sharing this information. Maybe take a class, maybe take a course, maybe reach out to me for consulting, because there is help in the community. At the end of the day, the laws are in place to govern how housing providers must conduct their business, right? And so it is always in your best interest. Like I said, if you're treating it like a business, you're not wearing your emotions on your sleeve. I know that sometimes there are complications with managing rental property. Listen, I've been in this space for almost 30 years. Nothing surprises me. I've managed different types of rental property. I've managed affordable housing. I've managed Class A buildings. I've managed luxury type of rentals. I've managed apartments and condos and townhouses in different parts of the city and different jurisdictions. And so one of the things that I've learned is that all tenants are not the same, and everything is not created equally. As much as we talk about it, right? Unfortunately, it's not applicable across the board. But that's another segment for another day. Today is all about the landlord who refused to fix a tenant's toilet. Now, I did say refuse, right? But let me explain what I know about the situation, why this landlord refused. But before I do that, let me get into the comment section here. Hey, Gwendolyn, thank you so much for tuning in. You said you got a new phone and you couldn't find me. I'm here. You can find me here every Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. I see you checking in on that YouTube channel. All right. And so the backdrop in the story here, this landlord self-manages their rental property. They have quite a few rental properties in two jurisdictions. So we already know that the laws are going to be different. The laws are not the same in those areas. So this landlord had actually sent a plumber out to the home. It's an apartment. So they sent a plumber to the apartment to fix the tenant's toilet the first time. And the plumber went back to the owner to let the owner know what was in the toilet. So the whole toilet had to come up. When the plumber pulled that commode up from the floor, there were children toys lodged in the pipe, which caused a backup. All right. So the children toys were in the pipe. The owner paid for the repair. The toilet was working fine. The tenant complained almost a month later about the same problem, that the toilet was not usable. It was backing up. Raw sewage was overflowing in the bathroom. So the owner again sent the plumber back out to the rental property to find out what was going on. And when the plumber went out again, he was surprised to find, in addition to more toys, there were wipes and there was a hairbrush that was lodged down in the pipe. So the plumber went back, told the owner what he found, took pictures. The owner was upset because this is not a cheap bill that this owner had to pay to the plumber. So the third time, when the tenant complained that they were not able to use the bathroom, which is a requirement, tenants are required to have a bathroom that is operable. Now, let me just say here that if there are multiple bathrooms, it's not always considered an emergency. Yes, the repair has to be completed, but if there is a second bathroom, if there's a second toilet in that rental property, then the owner has a little flexibility to maybe not get the repair done the same day, although they are still required to get the repair completed. But in this story here, the tenant had one working bathroom. And so when the tenant complained again, the owner was obviously in their feelings because they had to pay the plumber bill twice before. Now, here is where this owner made a mistake. Hey, Christina, thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. So here is where this owner made the mistake at. Instead of looking at what was in the lease, because the lease did cover tenant's responsibilities. So in a situation where the tenant was responsible, the owner could have, after paying that plumbing bill, passed on that cost, sent the tenant a letter, of course, with a copy of the invoice saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we sent the plumber out today. They made the repairs, and this is what it's going to cost you. Well, that didn't happen. The owner got into an argument with the tenant. This owner told the tenant he was not making any attempts to get another plumber out to that property, and that it was the tenant's responsibility to get the toilet fixed. Now, although I can understand the frustration of this landlord, you're going to learn why that was a major mistake, because at no point in time should any housing professional treat their business like a hobby and wear their feelings on their sleeves or their emotions on their sleeve and begin to argue with tenants. At the end of the day, it is a business. It is a rental property business that you must still operate. Okay. And so this owner, I see your comment, Gwendolyn. I'm coming to you. And so this owner got into I like to call it a heated fellowship with the tenant. Well, they got into a full-fledged argument, cussing and disrespect back and forth, right? And so obviously the tenant is upset because they are relying on this owner to make this repair so that they can use a bathroom, not just them, but also her kids, right? And so to have a landlord that would say, well, screw you, in so many words, I am not making a repair. I've already sent the plumber out. Good luck in figuring out, use a bucket, if you will. I don't care, but I'm not sending a plumber back out. And those were along the words that were shared with the tenant regarding how that owner felt about it. And he was adamant about not sending anybody back out to that rental property to take care of that issue. Hey, Robin, thank you so much for tuning in. All right, so let me go to your comments. So Gwendolyn, you said if you have to transfer because of mold and water in your apartment, do you go to a hotel for 3 weeks and transfer your security deposit, even though you pay 3 times as much as the new place? Okay, so Gwendolyn. Okay, I see your comment, Gwendolyn. All right. So I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to come back to that because that's a good point, Gwendolyn. Thank you so much for that. Hey, Robin, you said, what's the best way to reach you regarding consultant? I've been a landlord for 20 years. I have a question. Thank you so much for that, Robin. Here is my email address. Let me bring it up on the screen for you. And thank you so much for your question here. Let me share my email address at the bottom of the screen there. info@landlordlyfe.com. That is my email address. That's how you can reach me, Robin. Lyfe is spelled with Y. info@landlordlyfe.com. Thank you so much for that. All right, so let me go back to the discussion here. So this landlord got into a custom match with the tenant, told the tenant, screw you, use a bucket. I don't care what you do with your kids. I've sent the plumber twice. The bill has been through the roof and I'm not going to pay it anymore, right? And so this tenant took matters into their own hands. So instead of a sensible resolve, it cost this landlord almost $50,000. And here is where the problem came into play. There were other housing code violations. There were other violations in the rental property. There was not a working smoke detector. There were reported matters of infestation of mice, of rodents in that rental property. There were other issues in addition to this plumbing bill being an issue, right? And so this tenant contacted the local inspector's office and had a housing inspector to come out. And so here is where it took a turn for the worse. So that plumbing bill that owner would have been responsible for turned into a $50,000 nightmare, because now the owner was responsible for, they were fined for not having working smoke detectors. They were fined for infestation. They were fined because the floors needed to be replaced, not repaired, but the floors needed to be replaced. In addition to that, there were bars on the windows that had it had a lock that required a key. And so these housing violations began to stack up quickly, and it cost this owner almost $50,000 because they refused to, it stemmed from their refusal to pay for that plumbing bill. And so here is what I want you to know. As an owner, when you have situations like this, and I know that it can be heartbreaking, it can be troublesome when you are asked to pay for repairs that tenants are responsible for in accordance to the terms of your rental lease agreement. One of the things that I always say is when I talk to owners and they ask, well, Karissa, what should I do? I will always ask, what is in your lease? What's in writing? Because what you have in writing is what you should be standing on. You build a foundation on that. You build a foundation. Your rental business should be built off of that foundation. You start with what's in writing. And in the lease, it's stipulated that the tenant would be responsible for tenant caused damage. Now, let me speak to tenants really quickly here, because as a tenant, I want you to also understand that you, although you have rights, you also have responsibilities. First and foremost, know what is in your lease. Okay. As a tenant, review your lease, ask questions about what you don't understand. And so the tenant had their lease agreement. They knew what was in the lease, but yet because the owner did not follow the stipulations that they had agreed to in writing, when that tenant first moved in, that tenant took matters into their own hand, contacted authority. The inspector came out, fined this owner, not just for this problem of the toilet, but a whole laundry list of other issues. Now, I want you to know that when a tenant has a complaint, it is always in the best interest of an owner or a landlord to investigate the problem. And whether you're self-managing the property, whether you have a property manager, it's always in your best interest. It's in the interest of that rental business to assess whatever the complaint is. Send someone out, make the repair. If it is something that the tenant is responsible for, follow up in writing. Send that tenant a letter. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we were out today. We completed the repairs. We had to replace the pipes. We had to replace the toilet or whatever. Explain the situation. And if it is in your lease that the tenant is responsible for tenant caused damage, then you send that letter to the tenant and enforce the lease. At no point in time should you put all of that to the side, get into an argument with the tenant, disrespect the tenant, because at the end of the day, tenants, especially those who know their rights, and some tenants do know the system more than landlords. Let me just emphatically put that in the environment here, that some tenants do know their rights. They can understand the system, they can work the system, and they sometimes know it a whole lot better than some owners who self-manage their rental property. And in this situation, that is exactly what happened. So the inspector came out, assessed this owner with fines on top of fines. And so this owner reached out to me and asked what could they do. Well, if you're not making repairs, I don't know what you can do other than now make all of the repairs that the inspector has cited against you. And so it was a costly mistake. That is why I like to share. That's why I like to do these lives every Monday, encouraging landlords to make repairs, encouraging tenants to work with their landlords, to understand your rights. All right, so now let me come back to the comment section. Gwendolyn, I see your comments coming in. Give me 1 second. Let me try to catch up. All right, so Gwendolyn, you said you went to a hotel for 3 weeks regarding your situation in your apartment. You had mold in your apartment, okay? The apartment. All right. So looking at your comment, Gwendolyn, the apartment is in Delaware, but Delaware law says you only pay equivalent to 1 month's rent in Delaware. They said they had to transfer, that you had to transfer when you got behind on your rent. Okay, so Gwendolyn, there are quite a few things going on in your situation. And I don't want to go into detail with discussing all of your personal information, but let me just say this, that if you are, and if you're still, and thank you for your comments and your questions, and thank you for sharing. Thank you for your transparency, Gwendolyn, as a tenant. But let me just ask this question here. So I see that you have quite a few things going on. You had to go into a hotel. You obviously were either invited to or possibly told that you had to transfer to another unit. Has that transfer taken place, Gwendolyn? Have you moved into the new place yet? And let me also ask that if you didn't transfer, are you still renting from this landlord? So here's the thing when it comes to mold. Now, this story is not about mold, but I'm going to touch on this because I encourage everybody to ask your questions. When you have me live, ask your questions live, I'll answer it. So, but here's the thing when it comes to mold, and I'm glad that you brought this up, Gwendolyn. When it comes to mold, I want owners to understand the seriousness of it, because sometimes, whether it's mold or any other repairs where the tenant has to move out of that rental property, it can cost a lot more when the problem is not abated or taken care of right away. And so in this situation, Gwendolyn, you had to go to a hotel. Now, I don't know if you had to pay out of your pocket for the hotel or if your landlord had to pay for the hotel. But for me, what I would focus on now is whether or not you're in a new place. Because here's the thing, and I don't know the backdrop of the mold situation in your apartment, Gwendolyn. But feel free to reach out to me. You have my email address. Feel free to reach out to me and I can try to help you navigate this situation. And again, I'm not an attorney, so I can only provide resources for you that may be helpful. But in a situation, Gwendolyn, where there is mold and obviously it was bad enough for you to have to move out of that rental property, if the problem is being taken care of, then that's something that, unfortunately, I don't know how bad the situation is, how long you've been having this matter going on with your landlord, but if you have your landlord who's trying to take care of the problem, I don't know how long it was there before you asked them to transfer. That may weigh a little bit more versus you bringing this matter to the attention of your landlord and then they immediately took action. Uh, and so this can go different ways because here's the thing. If you have a landlord that's trying to do the right thing and make repairs, then in many cases, a court or a judge or an inspector may not impose hefty fines against a landlord. Now, if it's a situation where you report it to your landlord and they just refuse to make repairs, now that's something completely different. Nobody deserves to live in a place like that, right? And so I just want to make sure that we are all clear on that. Everybody deserves a place that's decent, safe, and sanitary. It doesn't matter if it's a house, an apartment. It doesn't matter what city or state, what jurisdiction it's in, right? Um, but Gwendolyn, email me so that I can follow up with you because I would like to get a little bit more information about it. So you said in your comment here, they moved you before talking with you. I'm curious to know how that happened. So you were in a hotel or something? Um, there are a lot of questions that I have. So I don't want to try to respond because there are a lot of questions that I have. So Gwendolyn, please do me a favor and email me. And I see that your question isn't necessarily about the mode, it's about the security deposit. And so if in fact you moved out and you were told that your security deposit is supposed to be returned, look at the terms of that rental lease agreement. Look at reasons why your landlord might have a reason to not return your security deposit. Okay. Now, I don't think that your landlord can withhold any of your security deposit because of mode. But if there are any other situations or conditions going on that your landlord has identified and documented, then they can reduce and deduct from your security deposit. Hey Juan, thank you for tuning in. Happy Monday. You said you cannot play around with mode. It has residual health consequences. Absolutely. I know that you know, Juan. Like that background picture too, by the way. Hey, Elizabeth, happy Monday. You said how landlords can deal with squatters. Listen, I'm going to get into that. Thank you for that question, Elizabeth. And so back to you, Gwendolyn, as it pertains to your security deposit. Look at any documentation that your landlord may have given you regarding why they're not returning some or all of your security deposit. Because if it's documented, for instance, there were damage to the property, if the property had to be cleaned, if there were unpaid rent, like look at your lease to see why, um, and especially ask for a report from that landlord. Ask them for a report documenting the condition of that rental property when you moved out. Now, ultimately, here's one of the things that I like to do. When I have a tenant who's moving out of a rental property, I'm going to do a move out inspection with them so that I can document and point out any issues so that it's clear why the security deposit might not be returned, whether it's a portion or all or what have you. So that is something I hope happened, but it doesn't sound like it happened in your situation, Gwendolyn. But look at any documentation that your landlord may have given you regarding reasons why they're not returning the security deposit. I don't think that mode is a legal reason for them to not withhold that security deposit. But feel free to email me. Let me give you my email address. Okay, so Gwendolyn, I see your comment here. I'm responding to your security deposit question, right? And you put a whole lot of information here, so I'm trying to piecemeal it together for you, which is why I said email me so that I can try to understand your situation a little bit better. I'm not trying to resolve the mode issue for you. I'm asking you to email me so that I don't keep asking you to share your personal business while I'm online. So I do thank you for doing that, and I don't have a problem helping you. And thank you so much for tuning in. So Gay, Miss Gay, you said, how can landlords deal with squatters? Now, it just depends on the jurisdiction because the laws are not the same in every area. And I know that you know that. But what I would like for you to do is to email me. I don't know if your squatter is a tenant who is holding over. I don't know if the squatter is someone who just moved into your rental property and just started living there, because sometimes that happens. I've had a situation, true story. I had a situation where I was managing a rental community, and in that community there were over 372 doors. It was not in the best or desirable area. I would not have recommended um, my enemy to move in that community, but nonetheless, it was a property that I was managing. And there were situations where, and I'm going to come back to you, Juan, because I know that you have heard some of these stories, being a retired law enforcement official. And so this situation, Ms. Gay, some of the squatters, they had gone into vacant units. They took the boards off the doors and the windows, and they went in and they just helped themselves to the rental property. And so squatters do have rights, just as tenants do have rights. And I know that it's unfortunate, especially when it's a situation where someone just go into a rental property, a vacant unit, and they take over as if they are tenants, right, with a lease, right? But I do have questions regarding that. So email me, Elizabeth. Let me help you with that, because number one, I would like to know the jurisdiction so that I can look at what the laws are in that area. And then also would like to know what type of squatter it is, how they came into the rental property. Is it a situation? I see it's in New York. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure if it was like Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx, Staten Island. Like, email me and I will follow with you. I do have some connections in New York. But in a situation, and I've had a situation where a tenant moved out and had given the keys to someone else, right? Things happen, but you should definitely document whatever the situation is. Documentation beats conversation every day. I promise you that. And then just taking that tenant to court. And sometimes you may not know the tenant's name, which is why in a situation like that, I would strongly recommend speaking to a reputable landlord and tenant attorney who can guide you on the best way to handle that. But feel free to email me. Let me give you my email address. Let me put it back up on the screen. That is it there at the bottom of the screen, info@landlordlyfe.com. So I'm going to leave it on the screen. Let me go back to my story here that I'm sharing about this landlord who refused to fix this tenant's toilet and was fined up to $50,000, close to $50,000. And this is a costly mistake that this landlord made. When it comes to tenants, again, I want you to always know your rights. As a tenant, educate yourself about the rights as well as your responsibilities where you live, right? Because there are regulations in place that governs how a landlord must operate their rental business. And as we see here, tenants will tune in to ask questions. And that's what this is all about. You also, as a tenant, you want to document everything. Document when you reported your problem, when you reported your complaint to your landlord, their response. If they are not responding, if they said, I'm not making the repairs, whatever happened, document it. Take pictures, take videos. You want to also make sure that you are communicating with your landlord. I always say that it usually works better when you can work together. And I know that sometimes that's not always the case. That does not always happen. But now here's some tips I want landlords to know and learn about this situation here. Because again, this is a costly mistake. Please, as a landlord, that proper maintenance is happening at the rental property. So if you're self-managing your property, you should also be inspecting your rental property to know the condition. And in this situation, a small problem, I won't say that it's small because it was a large plumbing bill. The landlord has sent a plumber to that property twice. Went to the apartment twice, found toys in the pipes. The whole toilet had to come up from off the floor. There were toys, a hairbrush, there were wipes in the pipes, okay? And so rightfully so, this landlord was frustrated. I get it, because a plumber's bill is not cheap, right? And so, but in that situation, in addition to that problem, there were other maintenance issues going on in that rental property. And that's why this owner had to end up paying almost $50,000. Actually, it cost him more than that because he had to do a lot more work versus taking care of that plumbing bill. And the tenant would have just stayed in the rental property with all the other issues that they had going on. But this is a no judgment zone. I don't judge. I just encourage owners to treat their business like a business. Don't treat it like a hobby. And unfortunately, this owner learned the hard way. Please, as a landlord, be fair with tenants. You're a housing provider. It doesn't do you any good to get into an argument with your tenant. It doesn't do you any good to cuss the tenant out or to disrespect them, even if the tenant does not respect you. I get it. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes you all just can't agree. Sometimes, listen, I have had a tenant who cussed me out, but here's what I do. I don't take those things personally. If a tenant comes to me and cuss me out from the crown of my head to the sole of my feet, I don't take it personal. I just say, oh, they're having a bad day. Because here's the thing, what we feed will grow and what we starve will die. And if you don't feed negative behavior, if you don't feed disrespect, at some point, it may die down. I said may, and that's a big word in that statement there. Nevertheless, it is a business. Please treat it like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, it just may pay you like a hobby. And so this landlord received a hefty fine, received complaints that not only did they not repair the tenant's toilet, but they were a slum landlord. Now, it's not my place to say whether they are or they are not, because this owner reached out to me. I just provided guidance on what they should do to correct the problem moving forward, right? I want you to understand at a point of time where tenants are learning more and more every day that they do have rights. Squatters, they're learning more and more every day, unfortunately, Ms. Gay, that they too have rights. It's all about when you recognize that there's a problem, quickly acting on it. Don't allow those problems to linger, because I can assure you that those problems will not go away. They usually don't disappear on their own. They don't vanish into thin air. Sometimes those problems will grow wings and just take flight. And that's the encouragement. That's the advice. That's my feedback on today, to hopefully help others avoid going through this situation. All right. So today was all about this landlord who refused to fix a tenant's toilet. And it's heartbreaking to me, especially when I learn of situations after the fact, right? Because this could have been avoided. I would have told the owner, had I known in advance what the problems were, to take care of the problems. Because ultimately, and as a landlord, please hear me clearly when I say this. Ultimately, as a landlord, it's always in your best interest to take care of that rental property, because it is an asset. You want it to grow. You want it to maintain its value. So please conduct inspections. Know the condition of that rental property. Take care of those maintenance issues, those maintenance problems. If there are infestation, if there are mice, if there are rats, if there are roaches, if there are bed bugs, if you take care of those problems. Now, taking care of the problem and documenting it is going to be so important. Those things go hand in hand. And if you find that your tenants are destroying the property, they're responsible for the infestation, educate them. Here's what I've learned about people, just studying people. People do things for two reasons, either because they don't know or because they don't care. Sometimes tenants just don't know. And I know I have colleagues who are watching. They're going to say, well, Karissa, common sense should kick in. Now, what might be common for some is not common for others. So don't build your business and don't operate your business based off of simple common sense or expecting tenants to know. Some tenants just don't know. So if you see something, say something, educate your tenants. So I wanted to share that. I did share 3 tips for tenants. I shared 3 tips for landlords because I want this problem to not be a story that I'm having to share again because I learned that someone else has gone through this situation. It's heartbreaking. It's a costly mistake that could have been avoided. Please don't refuse to make repairs as a landlord. That will usually come back to bite you in the butt. It usually does because tenants will contact authorities. Not only did this tenant contact the inspector's office, but this tenant also contacted news media about the situation. And all it takes is one bad complaint. It will, I promise, it will go fast really quickly. All right. So that is it. I wanted to share that today. I wanted you to be aware of this matter. I want you also to have a better understanding as a landlord of what to do. I wanted you as a tenant to have a better understanding of your rights as well as your responsibilities. So I hope that this was helpful today. My time is up. I thank you for yours. Listen, if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go to YouTube. You can find me, Landlord Lyfe with Karissa Spann. There you can find me live. You can find my replays. I'm live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube every Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It has been a fantastic pleasure having you to join me today. If, again, you need my email address to communicate with me, let me share that again so that you can reach out to me, contact me for coaching, consulting. I do offer property management services in person as well as virtually. My email address is at the bottom of the screen there, info@landlordlife.com. Please feel free to contact me. Please make sure that you tune in, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and finally, please like, please tag, and please share this information with somebody else. Is that all right? All right. And again, I thank you for your time, and I'll see you all next Monday right here, same station, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to say bye for now.